there's an oocyte, which makes up most of the follicle, and then there's just a few squamous-y looking cells that are surrounding the oocyte. So again, there's an oocyte, there's a little few cells together. Together, the oocyte plus the surrounding cells make up the primordial follicle. They tend to be found in these clusters, these groups called egg nests, which you'll find just inside the wall, outer wall of the ovary. Then we're going to look for a primary follicle. It's grown a little bit. It's a little bit bigger than a primordial. Instead of having a few squamous cells, you're going to have cuboidal-looking cells called granulosa cells that surround the oocyte now. The granulosa cells are very organized looking. You can see distinct layers. Again, kind of a cuboidal shape to them. Outside of those, though, are thecal cells, which are much more disorganized. They kind of are random in their shape and look all over the place. So again, we're gonna find granulosa cells and thecal cells that are basically surrounding the oocyte in a primary follicle. Now, moving from a primary follicle to a secondary follicle, the big differences here are size. It's going to get a little bigger again, and the presence of an antrum. So you start to see the beginnings of these little cavities, these little fluid-filled pockets develop. Notice, though, that the antrum is not going to be too big. If the antrum gets too big, that's a sign you're into a tertiary follicle. But if you just see the beginnings of an antrum, the oocyte is still there, and the oocyte hasn't really kind of lateralized to a particular side or to a particular edge, they're still secondary. When you see that the oocyte is definitely clinging to kind of one particular side of the follicle, and if the antrum dominates. So if the antrum is the dominant feature of the size of the follicle, that's a sign you're looking at a tertiary, also known as a mature or a Graafian follicle. This is what's going to pop very soon during ovulation, at which point the oocyte, along with the granulosa cells that are immediately surrounding it, which are called the corona radiata, those will be what are ejected from the follicle in the ovary. So again, corona radiata is just special granulosa cells that happen to be clinging to the outside of the oocyte during ovulation. All right, questions about the different stages of the follicular development we're going to look for? Now you have to get special slides that are labeled as such to see a corpus luteum or a corpus albicans. Now what will happen is once this ruptures and you have ovulation, the granulosa cells start dividing like crazy and filling this whole space and start secreting mainly progesterone. It's now called a corpus luteum. The corpus luteum is like a giant gland in your ovary. It looks like a gland. It's hard to kind of for me to draw with chalk because it just looks kind of all mottled and multicolored. There's kind of pinks and purples all mixed together. It looks very kind of dotty, with lots of dots from the nuclei of the glandular cells. And it's huge. It's huge. I cannot give it true justice here. I ran out of room, to be honest with you. I drew that, and this, and this, and this, and I was like, oh crap. I did not leave myself enough room to draw an appropriately scaled corpus luteum. If I would have drawn an appropriately scaled one, I would have made it even bigger than this, okay? Because it is ginormous. So this is going to be the dominant feature when you look at a corpus luteum slide. It's just going to take up most of the space of the ovary. Now, if there is fertilization and pregnancy, the corpus luteum is maintained. But if there is no fertilization or pregnancy, this is going to start degenerating towards the last few days of the cycle and ultimately mature into a piece of scar tissue called corpus albicans. So alb means white, and it will generally have a whitish, very pale look to it. To me, it looks like a little cloud, some kind of puffy white cloud. You'll see little purple specks in the puffy white cloud. Those purple specks are the nuclei of fibroblasts, which are secreting collagen, making scar tissue. So again, you're going to have to look at special slides that are labeled corpus albicans to see this. All right, any questions on what we're going to be looking for on the ovary slides? All right, let's get started up.